Welcome to Political Buzz. I'm Phil Arno. We continue our discussion this week talking about a race that will affect all of Western New York, the race for mayor of Buffalo. Now, I know some of you may be thinking, well, I don't live in the city. What do I care? Well, believe me, as the economic center of the area, if bad things happen to the city of Buffalo, we all feel it. So at least to a degree, we're all in this together. Last week, we had Mayor Byron Brown in to talk about his run for re-election. Unless you've been hiding from the COVID bug underground in some cave somewhere for a while, you probably know Mayor Brown lost the primary to a relatively unknown woman who identifies herself as a socialist. That makes Brown a write-in candidate. Some would say that's a challenge. I would agree. My guest on this Political Buzz is Ben Carlisle. Ben is also running for mayor of Buffalo, but Ben is not the incumbent. He's not an official party nominee. He's also a write-in candidate. And his name is not as short and not as easy to spell as Brown, I think. So I'd like to welcome to the show Ben Carlisle. Okay, so the first question then becomes, how much of a challenge is this to you? It's a tall order.
It's a very tall order, and I think it's, it's not impossible. A lot of people tell me it's impossible. They tell me, oh, well, at least you'll get your name out there. I'm not trying to get my name out there. I'm trying to win. When I go out in town, there was this window of time when it was looking like maybe Byron Brown could get on the ballot. And the Erie County Board of Elections said if that decision is upheld by the higher courts that Byron Brown can stay on the ballot, then all the other write-ins will have an opportunity to try to get on the ballot. Basically, there won't be a deadline. So I went out with my wife and a few friends for 4 days and we collected signatures. And I would say at least 3 in 10 people were like, no, I'm not gonna sign your ballot. I know who I'm gonna vote for. But 7 in 10 people were happy to sign the ballot. They're happy to talk to me about why I'm running. And I think what that's indicative of is there's a lot of undecided voters right now. There's a lot of people who feel like they want to change after 16 years of Byron Brown, but they don't want India Walton's change, and so they're reluctantly sticking with Byron Brown. And then there's some people who are frankly fed up with Byron Brown, and they're going to vote for India Walton because she represents change, and they're comfortable with the kind of change she offers. But neither one of them, as far as I can tell, are getting legitimate adoration. There are some people who are legitimately in love with India Walton. I'll grant her that, but I think it's a tiny, small fraction. She got, a shave over 12,000 votes in the primary. And she talks about how she has the will of the people. There's almost 300,000 people in Buffalo. She got 12,000 people to vote for her. That's not the will of the people. You see a lot of signs in Buffalo, a lot of Byron Brown signs, a lot of India Walton signs. What you see more of are empty lawns. People who are undecided or just are fed up with politics and they're not going to vote at all. So my biggest challenge right now is not convincing them to vote for me, but to let them know that there's a third option. The more and more people find out that there's a third option, that it's someone who's not associated with any major political party, someone who doesn't owe people favors, someone who isn't collecting money from billionaires, people come to my side and people are very, very happy to realize that they have another alternative. But that's the biggest chore. Like I said, not convincing them to vote for me, but just letting them know that there's an option.
Well, your point is well taken. There's almost 156,000 registered voters in the city, and she got around 12,000 votes. That's not a mandate. That's not an overall or overwhelming, vote of confidence. So, it's up in the air in terms of what's going to happen in the main election. It remains to be seen. Now, you are relatively unknown. Okay, you're not an incumbent and you're not a party nominee. Tell us a little bit about who Ben Carlisle is.
I came to Buffalo for school. So I came here in 2003. I finished up my undergrad. And honestly, I didn't really have any plans on sticking around. I was going to finish my undergrad and then move on. But after I finished my undergrad, I got accepted to UB Law. So I was like, oh, well, I'll stick around for 3 more years. And then I graduated from UB Law. And I knew it was going to be really challenging to get a job in Buffalo because I'm not from Buffalo. At the time, didn't have any family in Buffalo, but I got a job here in Buffalo, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll stick around a few more years. And then my thought was, well, if I get 5 years practicing law in the state of New York, then I'll have reciprocity and I can go somewhere else. But 5 years turned into 10 years, and now I've been here 18 years, and I love Buffalo. When I was growing up, we moved all over the place. I lived, born in Louisiana, then we moved to California, then we moved to Arkansas, then we moved to Delaware, then we moved to North Carolina. So by the time I came to Buffalo, I think I'd lived in something like 30 different houses. You know, and people would say, you know, where are you from? And it was always a tough question for me because, you know, I'm from Louisiana, my mom's family's still there, but, you know, we moved away when I was 4, and I'd never really spent more than a couple years in any town after that. So now people tell me, you know, where are you from? I tell them I'm from Buffalo, and it's awesome. I love it here, and I don't want to go anywhere, but I feel like depending on how this election goes, I might not have a choice because I'm not going to stick around if Indy Walton's going to be our mayor, and I think a lot of people feel that way. So, you know, that's kind of why I'm getting into this race. I love this town, and I'm completely dissatisfied with our choices currently, so.
Well, you know, the city of Buffalo is like a huge corporation. You know, there's 2,500 people or more on the payroll, $500 million or more of a budget, and in addition to all the other complications, there's federal laws to comply with and state laws, and you have a common council to squeeze things through. You just can't, as a chief executive, you can't make decisions. You have to have other approval processes. And in some cases, these are life and death decisions when it comes to law enforcement, emergency services. There's a real quality of life element in this for a lot of people. Very complicated. What gives you the qualifications to take on a job like that?
Well, honestly, you know, if the mayor's job was to handle all of that, it would be too daunting for one person, and I wouldn't want to try to do it. But City Hall is filled with thousands of workers. It's not the mayor doing it alone. As you said, it's a collaborative effort with the Common Council. So I think what a mayor brings to the table has to be good leadership and bringing out the best in other people. And that's what I can do. I've, you know, had the same job for 13 years. I've been extremely, extremely effective at what I do. I do, well, I say I do, I did. My last day in the office was October 1st, but I practice workers' compensation defense work. My job in workers' compensation defense work is to root out corruption, to find fraud, and to save my clients money. Over the years, I've probably saved them tens of millions of dollars. So, you know, as a chief executive, like I said, it's just bringing out the best in people, being an effective leader, having character, being able to reach across the line. As I've said before, I don't want to reach across the line. I want to get rid of the aisle altogether. It's time for a fresh start. It's time for someone with new ideas. I'm not going to come in there and, like you said, we're doing it this way, and this way, and that's the way it's going to be. It's going to require a collaborative effort, and it's going to require someone who can work with other people, and I think I can do that.
Okay, one of the things that you've stressed the most when I've heard you talk in the debate and on your website, you've stressed that socialism, which is a big topic in this race, socialism is a danger, and you've talked a lot about that. Explain a little bit about that subject.
It's a tricky subject because a lot of people, frankly, just don't know their history. And when I tell people I'm against socialism and they say why, and I say because it's never worked anywhere, and they say, oh, well, look at Sweden. And that's when you have to tell people, okay, Sweden is not a socialist country. Ask anyone in Sweden, they will tell you we're a capitalist country. They happen to have universal health care. And what I tell people is universal health care and capitalism are not mutually exclusive. But socialism and freedom are mutually exclusive. So you can't just say, oh, Canada's got universal health care, they're a socialist country. They're not, they're a capitalist country. The UK has universal health care, they must be a socialist country. They're not, they're a capitalist country. You look at places that have tried socialism recently, Venezuela being, you know, the most obvious example. They went from a very rich country to bread lines within 6 years. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work for a host of reasons, but most importantly, it removes the incentive for people to try hard and to excel. If everyone's getting the same portion, if everyone's treated the same, you know, inevitably you're gonna have people in society who don't wanna chip in their full effort. And then you've got people at the top who just get completely corrupted. So, you know, I think for those two reasons, it just doesn't work. I applaud the sentiment. I wish it would. It would be great if we could just all have the even Steven, and we would have this utopia. It just doesn't work is the problem. If it worked, if you could point me to one example of it working, I'd say, okay, let's do it. Let's give it a shot in Buffalo. But No American city has had a socialist since 1960, and there's a reason for that. Because people look around, they say, doesn't work, why on earth would we want to try it here? So I think it's just, my opposition to socialism, really simple, does not work.
Why do you think people are more accepting of socialism these days? I mean, it used to be very taboo, but recently it's become almost fashionable to say, you know, socialism is okay. A recent poll showed that I think 42% of Americans who were asked said socialism's not so bad.
Go back and ask those 42 people, what's the definition of socialism? And they're like, well, you know, maybe universal health care and billionaires paying more in taxes. That's not socialism. So and I don't know this definitively, but my guess is the 42% of people who say, yeah, let's try socialism, don't know what it is, haven't read a history book, and want something different. And everyone's frustrated with the gap inequality between the super rich and the super poor. It's only gotten worse over the last 60 years. And I think people are looking for anything to make, you know, to shorten that gap. There's no reason why the head of a company should make 100 times more than his or her employees. So there's definitely, I understand the frustration and I understand wanting to find a solution to that. It's just not socialism.
Yeah, I think it might be the tactic of a lot of people, politicians in particular, that use an us versus them, rich versus poor divide as opposed to get together strategy to, you know, to kind of rile people up. And you know, that's kind of a winning strategy when you can say, okay, we're divided, you got to be on my side. If you're not on my side, you're an enemy. And you know, maybe that's part of the reason. I'm not sure, but I see that more and more. You go to TV programs on the cable and radio shows, and they're all anger-based. You know, you have to be angry because the other side is doing something that's evil, not just wrong, but evil. It's an attack, a personal attack.
Yeah, that's where we've gotten in society. They want to divide us any which way they can, because if we're divided, we're not working together, and it distracts us from the important things. I completely agree, and it's really toxic, really, really toxic. And that's why, you know, India Walton has posted stuff online about how people come up to her in public and are really mean to her and vicious and nasty, and I just think that's terrible. You know, she has a different perspective. She has ideas I don't agree with, but she deserves respect. And, you know, because I tell people I don't agree with socialism and I don't like it, it doesn't mean I hate socialists. It doesn't mean I, you know, want to vanish them from the civil discussion. I think we should just talk about it. And I think the more we talk about it, we can convince each other that there's a better solution. So, you know, villainizing people, creating these differences, getting everyone so worked up, it's not the solution.
You know, I find no matter what somebody calls themselves, you know, socialist or conservative, you know, liberal, when you discuss topics and motivation and what people deserve and where things in policy lie, there really isn't that much of a divide. Most people agree that charities do good work and people who are down on their luck deserve a break and deserve help. Some of the divide is how to help people, but most of the time, when you get right down to it, most people have a good heart and they really want to help people who are less fortunate, and it's just a matter of how do you go about doing things sometimes.
Well, it's that, and it's the labels we give people. I would say, I'm going to make up a number here, but I'd say 80% of people are either slightly right of center or slightly left of center. And then you've got people on the far, far left and people on the far, far right. The problem is if you're slightly right of center, people want to know, well, are you a Republican or a Democrat? And if you give them the wrong answer, then they don't want to talk to you. And if you're slightly left of center, it's the same thing. So I think I think to the extent that I'm having some success in this race, it's the fact that people are so sick and tired of the labels. They're so sick and tired of the divide. You know, one of the first questions anyone says is, oh, you're running for mayor, are you a Republican or a Democrat? And I said, neither. I said, you know, I was a Democrat for 22 years, but I got fed up with party politics, and now I'm just If I like an idea, I'm going to say I like that idea. If I like a person, I'm going to say I like that person. But I'm not going to write someone off because they have an R or a D in front of their name. It's a really toxic way of trying to get things done, to only work with people who identify with your party. And like I said, so many people are beyond that, but we feel like you can't participate in the process unless you put one of those titles in front of you, especially as a candidate. In this town, it's 80% registered Democrat voters. People feel like, if I'm not a Democrat, why would I even try? And I just think that's really sad. We need good leaders, we need good ideas, and we need a whole lot less party politics.
Well, labels and 30-second sound bites are very shallow, and they're structured to divide people and to simplify things, and life is more complicated than that. Listen, we're out of time for this first segment. We're going to come back. Interesting discussion. Beyond just the election, it's an interesting discussion. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Political Buzz. My guest is Ben Carlisle, who is a write-in candidate for the mayor of Buffalo in the upcoming election. And let's get right back into it. Some of the platform items that you list on your website. You want to get rid of party politics. Okay, that's a kind of a generic platform issue. How would you go about softening the party divides in the city of Buffalo?
It's going to require talking to people. It's going to require shaking hands. It's going to require going up to someone and say, look, I'm not in your party, but I really like that idea. I'm going to champion it, and I hope you'll work with me. We need more of that. We've got so much of, well, if that idea didn't come from me or if it didn't come from my party, I'm not going to deal with it. It's just going to require communication. I think that's as simple as it gets. I can't wave a magic wand. I can't make people want to work with me. But I think if I can convince people that I'm sincere when I tell them I will work with anybody. If you have a good idea, I'm going to take it, and I'm not going to make it my own. I'll give credit where credit is due. But it's like we were talking earlier. No party has got a monopoly on good ideas. Some of them got some really bad ideas, and some of them got some really good ideas. But we can take from both parties, and we can find better solutions.
Mm-hmm. One of the other things you say is the law enforcement, police. You want to improve the police department, and you say that crime is an issue in Buffalo. Actually, the crime rate has gone down. I know there was a PolitiFact study because India Walton said that crime was a problem. And her position is that she would defund the police and put more social workers on the street. She feels that social workers would be a help in reducing crime. I'm not quite sure how that would be effective. By the way, we've reached out to India Walton, and we have not heard back. We would invite her to be on this program to explain her positions. No response yet, and hopefully we can get her to appear. But she would put more social workers, according to what she's said. Now, the PolitiFact study said that crime has gone down with the exception of when the pandemic hit. So it said that Byron Brown's claim that he's done a decent job on crime is mostly true. The Buffalo police seem to be in his corner. The head of the Police Benevolent Association said that the union backs him. Why would we need a change there with our law enforcement?
I think overall, yes, crime has been down. If you looked at 2019, our shootings were at the lowest level since 2011. We were doing pretty good. But then in 2020, we had a 90% increase in shootings compared to 2019. And you said the pandemic, I don't blame it on the pandemic, I blame it on the lockdowns that were championed by Democrats and that were continued far too long, to the point when we all knew that they weren't working. We had half the states were open, half the states were closed. The states that were open, their economies were thriving. They didn't have more people dying. They didn't have more people sick. They just had a lot less shootings, and they had their kids in school. But we in New York spent the entirety of last year locking down our schools, locking down our economies. And when you don't have adults going to work and when you don't have kids going to school, that's what happens. You have people wandering the streets doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. So I'm not going to say Byron Brown's done a horrible job with crime. I think if you look at the course of his career, we're trending in the right direction. But when Cuomo locked down New York State, when Mark Poloncarz tyrannically locked down Erie County, Byron Brown didn't say one word. He didn't say, our kids must be in school. You can't just not send kids to school for a year. He didn't stand up for the small businesses that got closed down. And so that's really frightens me, because Kathy Hochul has not indicated that she's going to be a different kind of leader than Andrew Cuomo. She's going to use any excuse she can. She already said she's contemplating the bringing back masks. It's just a matter of time. You know, when we get into the fall, we're going to have more cases. This virus is seasonal. When it's warm weather and people are outside, it transmits less. When it's cold weather and people are inside, it's going to be more. So when we get into November and when we get into December, Kathy Hochul's going to try to close down our schools again. She's going to try to close down our small businesses again. India Walton will do whatever she says. Byron Brown will do whatever she says. And we're going to see kids not in school again, and we're going to see small businesses closed again, and we're going to be right back where we were. So that's my biggest issue with Byron Brown. Not that he hasn't been an effective leader on crime, but that he won't stand up to people who are destroying Buffalo. I don't see any way around that, and he hasn't given one indication that he'll grow a backbone and he'll stand up to Mark Poloncarz and he'll stand up to Kathy Hochul when they try to close us down again.
Now we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left. I'm going to change pace a little bit. One of the things on your platform that I thought was a great idea, and I really haven't heard anybody else talk about this, you had talked about taking a lot of the power poles out of the city and burying the utility lines, putting up more trees. And I thought that was a great idea, a terrific idea, but I'll bet that's going to be a very expensive or complicated thing to do. Is that something that can be realistically accomplished?
I think it absolutely can, and I think the way we get it done is you do it in tandem. While we do that, you also have to replace our water lines. They're 100 years old. It has to be done. It's not a, well, hopefully we can get to it one day. It has to be done. We also have to redo our sewer lines. So at the same time, we can bury our utilities, we can replace our water lines, we can replace our sewer lines. It's going to take years. It's nothing I could snap my fingers and get done in the first 4 years of my administration. It's probably, looking at a decade-long project. We'd have to do it in sectors. We'd have to probably, grid off the city, start here, move here, move here. It would be a very long process. And Buffalo's not going to be able to raise the funds alone. We'd have to reach out to the state for assistance. We'd have to reach out to the federal government for assistance. But I think we could find the money, and once we're successful, then I think it'll be a model for other cities across the country to follow. It's something, like I said, at least with respect to the water and sewer lines, it has to be addressed one way or another eventually. And so while we're at it, why not bury our utilities? It would save us money in the long run. Anytime there's a power outage in the winter, you wouldn't have to go replace those lines. We wouldn't have to constantly butcher our trees and cut them down and prune them in order to accommodate the ever-expanding line. So it's a win-win. And as I've said, and as you said, every telephone pole that comes down, we put a tree up in its place. So it's good for the environment. It would create thousands of jobs. It would be better for the city. It would, like I said, it'd be a model to be replicated all over the country and frankly all over the world. It's a matter of time before someone finally tackles it and gets it done. It's a huge project, and I'm not afraid to tackle big projects.
Well, I think that's a brilliant idea. If it could be accomplished, I think it would be great for the city. And we've only got like 2 minutes left. And my last question is going to be, I grew up in the city of Buffalo, and I'm used to all my life hearing about how tough things were, plants closing down, the economy bad, losses of jobs. Not so much the last 15 years. Since Byron Brown has gotten in, development has increased. The downtown section has kind of seen a rejuvenation. The medical coroner has added jobs. Not as many young people are leaving the area for career, and it seems to have turned around. And because of that, I'm just wondering, overall, the reversal of fortunes compared to what Buffalo was, is it tough to make a case that we need a change?
I don't think it's tough to make. It's unquestionable that Buffalo's gotten better under Byron Brown's tenure.
And the population has grown on top of it for the first time in 70 years.
Slightly. I think we grew by about 10,000 people. This is a city built to accommodate a million people.
I think it was at 258, it's up to 270 now, so a little bit of an
12,000 people.
Yeah.
He's grown our population by 12,000 people in 16 years. If you look at lots of other cities across the country that were where we were, stagnation, no development. You look at cities like Nashville, you look at cities like Pittsburgh, you look at cities like Cleveland. They far eclipsed us. They started kind of where we were, and my folks live in Nashville. Nashville now looks nothing like it looked 16 years ago. Buffalo now looks pretty similar to how it looked 16 years ago. We've certainly seen improvements, but if this is the definition of success, if we can't do any better than this in 16 years, then I think that's a really sad commentary for Buffalo. This city has so much potential. The sky's the limit. And if we're satisfied with the fact that we now have 3 new restaurants downtown, I just think we need to aim higher. Things have gotten better. They could be much, much, much better.
Well, I agree with that. I do agree that there's a lot of potential and we should be doing better. But there is one caveat, and that is we are still part of New York State. And that being the case, we're kind of limited as to what the potential is because we still have to deal with the Cuomos. And now Kathy Hochul, we'll see how that develops, but you may be right. She may adopt what the policies of Andrew Cuomo was. That's to be seen. Actually, we're out of time for this political buzz, and that goes by so quickly. I'm so sorry that we don't have more time to keep going because it's been an interesting discussion. Again, we've reached out to the other candidate in this race, India Walton, and I hope to get her on. We're trying to get the candidates for Erie County Sheriff on, Erie County Comptroller, and maybe some of the other races that are coming up in this coming election. Thank you for watching Political Buzz, and thank you so much for watching WBBZ TV. We're your only local TV station, and we really appreciate connecting with you. We'll see you next time on Political Buzz.